There could be people who are living in the Magic Valley of Idaho who are even more dangerous than some refugees or illegal immigrants. Story I came across at something called the Washington Free Beacon. It says this: Beijing, that's the capital of China, Beijing spy networks in the United States include up to 25,000 Chinese intelligence officers and more than 15,000 recruited agents who have stepped up offensive spying activities over the last 5 years, according to a Chinese dissident with close ties to Beijing's military and intelligence establishment. And apparently, this guy got out because he and some of his friends inside the government had discovered that other members of the Politburo were making land deals in the United States and were now worth billions of dollars because of the land they were able to buy, sometimes with the money of the Chinese people. And when some of them who discovered this was going on started getting jailed, the others decided it was time to get out of Dodge, or in this case, Beijing, and they've left the country. And they're now warning people in this country of the trouble that's ahead. So if you assume there are 40,000 of these people who are 25,000 who are agents, they're likely masquerading as students or in various high tech jobs, especially. If you would extrapolate how many of those would be spread around the country and 15,000 people who are recruited, then there are likely some at least in Boise and maybe in Pocatello and some of the other colleges and universities around the country. This is a staggering, staggering figure. 40,000 people spread across the United States in these roles as spies does not bode well for the United States. Yesterday, William McGurn, a columnist at the Wall Street Journal, wrote and said that we've got to start playing hardball with the Chinese. The first thing we have to do is tell them they can't send their students to all of our prestigious schools any longer. That might also help them deal with the North Koreans, too. We have a caller with us. Caller, you're up next. You're on the air on KLIX. Go ahead.
Good morning, Bill. As far as the immigration thing goes and legal immigration goes, I cannot fault someone for wanting a better life, but I can fault them for how they do it. And I can tell you that I work with a lot of people that I don't know. They got paperwork, but I don't know if they're illegal or not. And I would trade them in for a bunch of people on the assembly line of the dole out of the government that are complaining about people that are actually working. I do believe that we need to do something about our immigration laws, and I think we need to do something to help some of these people. But if you come into this country illegally, don't cry when you get sent home. That's just like driving down the road 10 miles over the speed limit, and then when you get caught, start crying about it. You were breaking the law. Suck it up.
There were some Democrats I heard on MSDNC a few years ago saying that a lot of the people who are here illegally didn't know that it was against the law to come here. And then I thought, well, then why are they coming in the underneath trucks or scaling the walls or digging tunnels? You know, because if you thought it wasn't illegal, you would just show up at the border crossing and say, "Hi, I'm on my way to visit my sister Consuela in Colorado," and they would let you pass through.
Well, come on. I mean, if a Democrat's saying that, you know he's blowing smoke for one.
Right?
And they know they're doing it illegally. They're knowing, and they pay big money to coyotes to get them in this country and end up in slavery. So it is a problem. But this problem is much broader than that. I mean, we have spoiled our children to the point that they will not do things that get their fingernails dirty. So
I give
someone's going to do it.
I do give credit to the Latin workers because these are people that are willing to work any job, all hours, and they're like, even though illegally, they're like any other immigrant that seems to come here. They go, wow, look at this opportunity. Oh, you mean all I have to do is show up and I get paid for it? And yet, in our own country, it is difficult to motivate a lot of people who
And
obviously
and
have.
Bill, why is that? These people come from a country that is extremely poor. They have nothing. And if they can work for something and get something, they'll do it. But our kids have gotten to the point that all they have to do is say, Mom, I want to go somewhere. Can I have 20 bucks? Where's the motivation in that?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, my grandson just recently wanted to go on a 4-H trip out of state. And we all told him he wanted money. We all told him, you want money, you better start mowing lawns. And he went out and he knocked on doors and he got mowing jobs. And he raised the $800 to go on that trip. And I cannot fault him for that. He did a good job.
Well, I'll be honest, I'm going all the way back to when I was a kid growing up. And I'm 55 in a couple of months. So I'm talking the 1960s and 1970s. We had more expectations from our parents at the time because my parents were all Depression, World War II people. But still in my neighborhood, there were kids whose families, mom and dad had gotten a good job with the state, and so there were not a lot of pressures other than maybe mowing the family grass once a week. These kids didn't have to do a lot. They spent most of their time watching Saturday morning cartoons while I was working with my dad. And I used to be extremely jealous of the fact that I had to get up and go swing a hammer with him, even when I was a little boy. And they were all lounging around or they were playing ball in the yard. And I look back on it, and you know what? Most of them are still struggling to adapt. So, as difficult as my parents made my life, or thought they did at the time, they did me a favor at some point.
Well, and I totally agree with you. I mean, I thought my dad was me. He flat told me, he says, my responsibility to you is to keep clothing on your back and keep you educated. That's my responsibility. Everything after that is a luxury. And when I asked him for something that was out of that boundary, his first words were, what are you going to do for it?
Oh,
And
the
I,
only thing
I
I
thank
heard.
and I thank him for it now because I've learned that lesson.
And, we all grew up thinking that our parents were the only people who said, what do you think, I made of money?
Yeah, that was a common one. Yes, sir.
Hey, thank you much for the telephone call. 10 minutes away from 10 o'clock. Bill Colley with you this morning. Our top story on News Radio 1310, KLIX and News Radio 1310.com. Right practically on our doorstep. It's not immediately on our doorstep because it's not a contiguous state, but it's very close. The entire state of California is considering designating itself, that is the government of that state, a sanctuary state, not a sanctuary city or county, but a sanctuary state. Sandra Hutchins is the Orange County sheriff. That's one of the last real bastions of conservative republicanism in the state. She appeared with Tucker Carlson on the Fox News channel and said she's going to have a problem with this if the liberals in her state go through with it.
We've been cooperating with ICE and with the federal government for many, many, many years, very cooperatively, very effectively. And we're talking about serious crimes, serious criminals who have committed a crime. They've been tried here, they've done their time, and we've been notifying ICE of these individuals so that they can go through deportation proceedings. Senate Bill 54, Senator De Leon said this is the only thing he can think of to do to stop the quote-unquote Trump deportation machine. And that is clearly not an issue. That is not an issue. This is a totally political issue, and it does not take into account the public safety of Californians, which I deeply care about, and that is the real issue. There's no need for this bill. Things have been working fine without it. The author has stated that this will prevent local law enforcement from doing immigration enforcement on the streets. We never have done immigration enforcement on the streets. We have no desire to do that.
Is it just me or the liberals running California working hard to leave the United States and become part of Mexico once again? Is that what the goal is? She pointed out the safety of people on the streets, but I think the feeling in Sacramento is, well, the odds are the people are going to be shot and killed are often going to be Republicans anyway, and we really want new Democrats here voting for us so we can continue to raise taxes and provide more social programs that will eventually bankrupt us, and then we can go to the national capital and say, we need more money. Oh, wait a minute. But if the national capital happens to be Mexico City, they won't have any money to give you. If it happens to be Washington, you should be told to go jump in the lake. This country, and I would have never said this a few years ago. I used to say, and people would get angry with me on the radio, that the country was going to split into two. we were going to have a red America and a blue America. And people would say, it's not going to happen. Now, of course, you actually hear it from the Democrats, too. And they actually say they'd welcome it. Well, so would I, because if we didn't have to take care of these people, because right now it's like California and Illinois and New Jersey are like being in a boat with a drunken buddy, and you're out in the middle of the lake, and you're in about 100 feet of water, and your drunken buddy, California, Illinois, and New Jersey, your three drunken buddies, they're all trying to shoot the fish in the water, but one of them's going to put a bullet through the hull of the boat, and you're going to sink. So what you might think is, well, tell you what, I'm going to kick them out of the boat. They can go get their own boat, leave them to their own devices, and I'll remain afloat. That's where we are right now with all of this. It's 9:53. Bill Cowley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310, KLIX and newsradio1310.com. And take your bad football teams in good riddance, too. The only team that has any ability there is moving to Nevada anyway. 736-0300, 736-0300, the number to reach us. And of course, my email address is bill.colley@townsquaremedia.com. Carlson had another guest last night. He had Colonel Ralph Peters on the air. And Peters is a bit of what we used to call a neoconservative. And they were having a debate about the danger supposedly posed by Russia. Russia. Yet we've got to deal with a North Korea that is threatening us with nuclear weapons. We have to deal with a China that apparently has 40,000 people in our own country spying on us. We've got to deal with some criminal, illegal aliens. We've got to deal with certain people in government who think we should be overrun by refugees. And yet they just keep saying, Russia. Again, I don't think Russia has 40,000 spies here like the Chinese do. Russia hasn't fired off a couple of missiles and said, you're next. That hasn't happened. And when I keep hearing this, it makes me wonder, what in the world is the priority of the establishment in this country? That is the government establishment, the bureaucratic establishment, the media establishment. What truly is, we're not at war with the Russians. We've got all of these other problems, and yet they insist on going down this road. Ted Cruz was asked this question yesterday. He said, the best I can tell you is Russia might be an adversary. But folks, there's no declaration of war. We've got a caller with us. Caller, you're up next. You're on the air on KLIX. Go ahead.
Yeah, good morning, Bill. What you just described with California and those more liberal states peeling off, and I agree, good riddance. I believe that's exactly what's going to happen after the next election when the Democrats lose badly again, and that's it. That's all they got left is to try to crawl into a hole and hunker down, because I don't think they're going to try. What have they got left to use other than their Bernie Sanders tactics where they incite riots and violence? I mean, that's all they have.
And our new government here in the Midwest, maybe somewhere like Omaha, Midwest and West, in a much more Omaha or Topeka or somewhere, and we won't have to worry about laws telling us that men who think they are women are going to go in and use the little girl's room, and that'll be gone, and we might be able to go back to more traditional notions of marriage and have a new constitution that enshrines what was really traditional America.
It would be very interesting to see what would happen.
I would agree.
Take care, Bill.
You too. Thank you much for the telephone call, sir. And let them have their bacchanalia, spread their diseases, and go around killing each other in the streets. Here's Ted Cruz answering an MSDNC question about Russia being an enemy.
Is Russia an enemy of the United States?
Russia is a significant adversary. Putin is a KGB
Do you
thug.
think that Trump is treating them that way?
I think that we have had 8 years of Barack Obama showing nothing but appeasement towards Russia.
Oh, you forgot about that. Oh, that's right. Yeah. Oh, don't worry. Once the election is done, I can let you all run roughshod over me. Remember that comment he made to Medvedev, the right-hand man of Vladimir Putin? And all this Putin is a thug talk. We're allied with the Saudi Arabians. They're thugs. We're trying to be friendlier with China. We're talking about the fact that they're thugs. I'm so sick and tired of hearing all of this that, well, these are the bad guys at the moment because we can get the most hay out of this politically. bunch of baloney. Why is there this notion that we always have to go around fighting with everybody all over the world in the first place? Well, he invaded Crimea. Yeah, because he had a naval base there and Ukrainians were threatening his access to it. What would happen if suddenly Cuba said tomorrow we're closing off Guantanamo? I think we would be down in Cuba really fast, setting the Cuban people straight on that one. This double talk you constantly hear out of all of these people is just getting to the point. I really would like people to start thinking about how we revive America, restore our traditional values, restore our traditional economy, restore our traditional patriotism, which at one time people like George Washington said, stay out of other people's affairs. Let's focus on taking care of ourselves. God willing, if the creek don't rise, I'll be back here tomorrow morning between 8 and 10 o'clock, and hope you can join us. As I said earlier, Kelton Hatch expected to join us from Idaho Fish and Game between 9 and 10 tomorrow. And Rush Limbaugh's program up next following the news at 10 o'clock this morning. Sean Hannity following the news at 1 o'clock this afternoon. And after 4 o'clock news from Fox, it'll be Glenn Beck right here at News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com.